I'm Liam, and I gave up everything to fund my sister's college, only to learn at a family dinner she'd forged my signature to drain my savings for her lavish lifestyle. I worked 2 jobs, skipped vacations, gave up my dream of owning a home, all to make sure my sister could go to college without debt. And then, at a family dinner, surrounded by people I once thought loved me, she laughed and called me a loser. My mom just said, "Don't ruin the mood." No one defended me. No one even blinked. That night, something inside me snapped. I uncovered proof of her fraud, a secret that could destroy her facade. It didn't begin with a scream, not even a fight. It began with a sentence, soft, almost forgettable, except I never forgot it. We were at my parents' house in Savannah just 7:00 p.m. on a Saturday. The air carried whispers of her deceit. My mom, Eleanor, was setting down a tray of cornbread while my dad, Henry, filled glasses with sweet tea, as if hiding their complicity. Isabel, my younger sister by 5 years, sat cross-legged on the couch, scrolling her phone like she was plotting her next lie. I'd driven straight from the warehouse, grease still under my nails. I was tired, hungry, and already doing mental math on how to stretch my paycheck to cover another tire rotation I wasn't charging for. I thought this dinner would be a reset, a simple gathering. It wasn't. "I just got the official acceptance from UC Berkeley," Isabel announced mid-bite, like she was sharing the weather. Mom gasped like it was breaking news. "Oh, sweetheart, we're so proud of you." I smiled automatically. She hadn't even looked up at me. "Well, college is expensive," Isabel added, eyes still on her screen. "But it's worth it. Totally worth it." My mom nodded with calculated approval, masking her knowledge. Then she turned to me and said, "Now, we don't expect you to pay for it, Noah, but you've always been the responsible one." She smiled to conceal her role in the scam. No one else said a word. Just kept eating, like that sentence hadn't tilted the ground under me. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. That's how these things work in my family. They never asked outright. They just dropped things at my feet and walked away. Later that night, after the dishes were cleared and I drove back to my small rental, I sat in front of my budget spreadsheet. I'd been saving for a house. Nothing big, just a 2-bedroom with a patch of grass. Something I could call mine. Something $22,500. 0 cents was the number in bold at the bottom of my screen. If I kept saving, I'd hit my goal by spring. But then Dad's voice came back to me. "College debt breaks people. I've seen it ruin futures." I stared at the screen a long time before I pulled up my banking app. 2 days later, I transferred $9,500, 0 cents to Isabel's initial fees. Enrollment deposit, textbook pre-order, housing deposits. I didn't tell her where the money came from. I didn't tell anyone. When she texted, "Thanks," with a string of heart emojis, I just replied, "No problem." That night, I lay in bed listening to the radiator rattle, reminding myself, it's just money, she's family. I can catch up. I've always caught up. But something felt off. The next morning, I opened Oktaktong during my break at the warehouse and saw her latest post. A first day of college outfit reveal, complete with a new pair of heels and a designer tote bag. Her smug voice taunted, "All thanks to my sister's wallet." I stared at the screen as my blood boiled with betrayal. The same twist in my stomach returned, tight, silent, and sharp. 2 weeks later, I came home from a late shift and found a box sitting on my porch. My mom's handwriting scrawled on the top. "Isabel's mail." "Thought you could drop it off," I sighed, dragged it inside, and sorted through a pile of glossy campus flyers, credit card offers, and unopened catalogs. Then I saw an envelope with my name on it. Noah, co-singer, was printed under my address. I froze. Co-singer. I slid it open with a key and pulled out the letter inside. Terms, repayment schedules, interest rates. My heart pounded. I'd never signed anything except I must have. Somehow I sank onto the floor, pages scattered around me. I hadn't just helped her. I'd signed something big. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just helped her. I'd signed away everything. I didn't sleep much the night I opened that envelope. Even after I rechecked the loan papers, scrolled back through every email, every text thread, there it was, buried in a line I hadn't thought twice about. Acknowledgement of guarantor. All it took was a rushed e-signature at the DMV when said her housing paperwork needed a backup signer just in case. Just in case. She hadn't mentioned student loans. She hadn't mentioned I'd be the one on the hook. Months passed after that night, and I didn't say a word. I kept working, doubled my shifts at the warehouse, skipped meals to stretch gas money. My savings plan, forgotten. The house I'd once dreamt of, replaced by a payment schedule that would outlive my 30. Mom left me a voicemail. We're having a little get-together this Thursday. Isabel's home. You should come. I almost didn't. I stared at the message on my phone 3 separate times that day. The third time I deleted it, but not before hearing, "She misses you." Did she? Thursday rolled around faster than I'd hoped. I left work at 6, wiped my hands as best I could, and changed into a clean sweatshirt in the warehouse restaurant. I kept my work boots on. There wasn't time to swing by home. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, I could already hear music through the windows. Their house was glowing, a facade of warmth hiding their lies. I stepped inside. My boots squeaked on the freshly mopped tile. My mom looked up from arranging tulips and smiled to mask her guilt. "Well, you made it," she said. "Go freshen up, dinner's almost ready." Isabel emerged from the kitchen in a pale silk jumpsuit, her poise a calculated act. She smiled at me. "More teeth than warmth?" "Did you come straight from the pit?" she asked, taunting me with her deception. I let it go. That was the only way to survive these nights. Dinner was roast chicken, lemon asparagus, and truffle mashed potatoes. I found myself sitting between Dad and the coat rack. Isabel was seated squarely in the center, her wineglass full, boasting about her Paris plans funded by my stolen savings. No one asked how I was. No one even made eye contact unless I refilled the gravy. Dad handed her a slim gift box halfway through dessert. "We know you've been networking like crazy, sweetie. Thought this might help with your interviews." Inside was a sleek silver tablet, one I knew I had partially paid for when my checking account hit overdraft last week. Isabel beamed. "Oh my God, thank you. This is amazing." She didn't thank me. She never did. I bit into a dry piece of pound cake and tried to tune it all out. Tried not to care until the conversation shifted. "So," Isabel said with a mocking grin, "I got nominated for a semester abroad." "Paris, oh, how lovely," Mom cooed. "Of course, it's not cheap," continued with a smirk. "Hope you're ready to pick up a third job, sis." She said it like a joke. Light, playful, but every syllable hit like a slap. There was a pause, one of those tight, artificial silences people fill with nervous laughter. I smiled politely, even as something twisted deep in my chest. "Maybe," I said, forcing my voice steady. "You could pick up a job this time." Isabel raised an eyebrow. "Me? A part-time job? That's rich coming from someone who's been working at the same warehouse since high school." Laughter, brief, uneasy. Mom jumped in, shaking her head. "Let's not ruin dinner." Dad cleared his throat and passed the butter like we hadn't just someone throw grease on a fire. I finished my cake in silence, then stood up, pretending I needed the bathroom. I walked down the hall, heart pounding, ears hot. I didn't cry. Not then. Not yet. In the bathroom, I ran cold water over my hands and stared at my own reflection. I had gone from sharp to hollow these last few months. I reached for my wallet, needing a mint to settle my stomach. But when I opened the flap, I saw it tucked behind my insurance card. A photo of Isabel and me as kids. It was one of those cheap strip mall snapshots, both of us grinning, missing teeth, our faces alight with innocence now lost. I stared at it, then quietly I slid it out, folded it in half, and slipped it into the drawer beneath the sink. I didn't tear it. Didn't curse her name. I just let it go. It was a small act, but it felt like the first breath I'd taken in weeks. On the drive home, I kept the radio off. The streets were half-lit. Savannah quiet in the way only working-class towns get after 10. My resolve hardened with every mile. I kept hearing's voice. That's rich from someone who's been in the same warehouse since high school. She'd said it like a punchline, like I was a side character in her show. And for the first time, I let the thought in. Maybe I really was just the loser in their story. That thought echoed in my head as I tossed my work boots in the corner and slid onto the couch that night. The silence screamed her betrayal. I didn't care. I was too tired to change, too wired to sleep. Around 1:15, I am exact time burned into my memory. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I almost ignored it, assuming it was a weather alert or some junk ad, but the notification wasn't from a news app. It was from my credit monitoring service. New inquiry under your name, view alert. I blinked, sat up straighter, clicked the link, and just like that, sleep vanished for good. A new lease had been opened in my name, student housing, a different building from where Isabel had been staying. Confused, I scrolled through the file. There it was, in bold letters, co-financing Gona Dwyer, relationship financial guardian. My hands started to sweat. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't even heard about a new lease. I stared at the line, reread it, and felt my throat tighten. Clicking the contact number listed, I waited through 3 rings. A woman picked up, groggy but polite. University Suites, leasing office. This is Hannah. I just got a notice about a lease under my name. I began trying to keep my voice calm. It says I'm the co-signer for Unit 3B. I didn't apply for anything. She asked for verification. I gave it. After a pause, she said plainly, "You're listed as the responsible party. Your sister Isabel said you agreed to co-sign and handle the deposit." I couldn't respond for a full beat. My jaw clenched so hard I felt my mirth ache. "I never signed anything," I said finally. She sounded hesitant. "I mean, it was done electronically. Maybe she did say you were like her financial guardian." I managed a strained thanks and hung up. Then I got up, turned on my laptop, and pulled the document. I read it 3 times, every term and clause. Then I quietly emailed it to my work inbox with the subject line, "Evidence." I didn't text Isabel. I didn't call Mom. I didn't rage on social media. I didn't slam things or scream. I sat in silence with a cup of black coffee and a dull ache behind my eyes, the sting of her forgery fueling my fight. I had crossed some line without knowing it and couldn't walk back. That weekend, I drove south to Berkeley. Isabel had left a box of things at home, some books and makeup bags she claimed were essential and couldn't live without. I figured since I was off Sunday, I'd deliver it, clear one thing from my mental list. She was waiting in the lobby of her building, air kissing my cheek to hide her deceit. Her hair was perfectly curled, her luxury fueled by my stolen funds. "You made it," she said as if I'd been an Uber. "The girls are upstairs. They've been dying to meet you." I didn't say much, just followed her up 2 flights and into a living room brimming with her ill-gotten wealth. 4 girls sat around sipping pink drinks. They barely glanced up. "This is Noah," Isabel said with a shrug. "She helps me out sometimes." One of the girls raised an eyebrow. "Oh, like your assistant or something?" There it was. I didn't answer. I didn't correct them. I just placed the box near the corner, nodded once, and turned around. Isabel called after me, "Hey, you don't want to hang a bit?" I didn't even look back. On the drive north, I kept my windows cracked just enough to feel the wind slice in. It sharpened my plan to expose her. I thought about those girls, how none of them knew me, how they never would, because Isabel never wanted them to. She'd erased me. Not in a loud public way, not with cruelty I could call out. No, she'd done it gently, casually, like a blurry edit in a photo, cropping out what didn't fit her story, and I had let her. Back home, I didn't kick off my shoes or grab dinner. I went straight to my desk, opened a new folder on my laptop, named it for later. I dragged in the lease PDF, the email trail, screenshots of bank transfers, Venmo payments, gift receipts, old texts where she'd said things like, "Can you spot me till next week and I'll pay you back after finals?" I didn't know what I was building, but I knew I needed it because someday someone would ask me why I stopped, why I finally said no, and I wanted to be ready. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because Tuesdays were always oil change specials at the warehouse, meaning chaos, long lines, and customers breathing down your neck for a $20.00 coupon. I'd just finished logging out a customer's invoice when I sat down in the break room and opened Facebook to scroll mindlessly during lunch. That's when I saw it. A shared post from my parents' old friend Lydia. Caption: "So proud of this girl for staying strong. Let's help Isabel stay in school after unexpected hardship." I blinked, clicked, then stared. Isabel's GoFundMe page. "Keep Isabel in school." I read her words slowly, as if my brain couldn't quite register the combination of letters. After our parents lost their retirement fund, I'd been scraping by. My older sister tries, but she can't always help. I'm doing this alone. Underneath was a photo of her on the floor of a dorm room, bundled in a sweater, clutching a textbook to her chest like it was all she had left. Her staged tears mocked my sacrifices. She posed as a victim while pocketing my money. I didn't know when she'd learn to cry on cue, but she was good at it. My hands trembled. $1,500.00 every month. Groceries, extra books, clothes, Wi-Fi bills. I paid it quietly, steadily, while she was online collecting sympathy money from strangers, from our neighbors, from Lydia and her quilting circle. She called me someone who tries. I exited the app, walked outside, and sat on the curb next to the dumpster. I didn't cry. I just opened the browser and printed the GoFundMe page, then took screenshots of every comment, every donation. $10.00 from Aunt Merrill, $30 from my high school lab partner, $50 from someone I didn't even recognize. I forwarded it all to my personal email. Then I reopened the folder on my laptop that I'd created the night I found out about the lease for later now had new content. Before I left the warehouse, I dug through my desk drawer and pulled out a dozered business card. Dan Navarro, legal aid. He'd come in months ago when his Civic's alternator blew out. I remembered him because he insisted on paying in full even though I offered a discount. I typed out an email right there in the office before heading home. Subject: hypothetical question. Body: Dan. If someone were raising money online using misleading information, say claiming financial hardship while secretly being supported by someone else, would that be considered fraud legally, hypothetically? Noah. I didn't expect an answer right away. Legal people work under their own time, but just sending the question felt like putting a foot down. Dinner that night was a bowl of pasta that had sat out too long. I ignored it, consumed by her lies. I didn't bother reheating. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the wall across from me, the one where Isabel's graduation photo used to hang. I had taken it down last week without even realizing it. My fingers had just lifted it like muscle memory and placed it in the drawer. I thought about the time she failed that econ class her first semester. She called me sobbing. I drove down that same night with a tub of ice cream and spent the night on her dorm floor. She'd curled into me like a child, whispered she didn't know if she belonged there. Was it real? That fear or a dress rehearsal for this narrative she's spinning now where she's the struggling girl, the underdog, while I'm the background noise. I typed a message, "We need to talk," then stared at it for a full minute, deleted it. What was there left to say? She'd written her story, and I wasn't in it. Not really. Not as a sister, not as a person, just a vague idea, a helper, a stepping stone. I turned off the lights and left the dishes in the sink. It was nearly midnight when my phone buzzed again. An email subject, rehypothetical question. Body: Noah. Technically, if someone raises funds under false pretenses, especially if it causes real harm to others or is used for personal benefit instead of the stated reason, it can fall under civil fraud. There's a process to report this. Let me know if you want to talk more, Dan. Attached was a link. Report a GoFundMe violation. I stared at the screen for a long time. Did I click it? No, not yet. I closed the laptop, turned off my lamp, and as I lay there in the quiet, I whispered to the dark, "Let her keep digging." It had rained that morning. One of those soft, intermittent savanna drizzles that didn't soak your coat but made everything feel damp, heavy with the weight of her fraud. I parked my truck 2 houses down from my parents' driveway, more out of habit than necessity. I hadn't called ahead. I just showed up the way family used to. Inside a small canvas bag on the passenger seat was the gift I'd spent 2 months making, a hand-bound photo album. I'd restored every old family photo I could find, yellowed edges, ink smudge dates, water stains from the attic. I'd scanned, color-corrected, printed, and arranged them chronologically, even slipped in captions like 4th of July 2000. Dad and the grill he never cleaned. I wanted it to mean something. For once, I wanted to bring something that wasn't a bill paid or a favor done, but a gift that was mine. When I stepped inside, the party had already started. A hollow celebration of her stolen success. I caught Dad across the room and walked toward him, album tucked under my arm. But before I reached him, Isabel swooped in with a smirk, knowing she'd claim my work. She plucked the album from my grip and beamed. "Dad, this is from both of us." He looked surprised, then delighted. "You two did this." Isabel nodded, slipping her arm into his to erase my effort. He hugged her tightly. "You always remember the little things, sweetie." I stood there, hands now empty, like I'd simply delivered a package instead of created a memory. A few minutes later, I heard Mom in the kitchen. "Isabel really brought the family together again this year." I didn't correct them. Didn't say, "Actually, I made that," or "She didn't even know it existed until today." I just poured myself a glass of flat ginger ale and found a chair by the window. Sometime later, I wandered into the kitchen while most guests hovered around the cake. Mom was organizing serving trays, her moments a shield for her denial. I leaned against the counter and said quietly, "It's getting a little hard, Mom." She looked up, barely pausing. "What is?" I hesitated. Being here, watching her take credit for everything, feeling like I don't exist. She set down a spoon with a metallic clink. "Noah, come on. You're always so emotional. It's always about how someone wronged you. You make yourself the victim every time. That word, victim." I'd heard it before, from Isabel's lips, once in a whisper she didn't know I caught. But from Mom, from the woman who used to tuck me in, rubbing circles on my back when I had nightmares, I didn't reply. There was no fight left in me. She hummed a little tune under her breath to drown out my truth. Later upstairs, I lay on the twin mattress in my childhood bedroom, staring at a ceiling that had once held glow-in-the-dark stars. Now, it was just paint, faded and chipped like the rest of this house. Framed pictures lined the dresser. Isabel at prom, Isabel at graduation, Isabel in her cap and gown, all teeth and triumph. My photos. 1. 3rd grade. The one where my bangs were crooked and I had a scab on my chin from falling off my bike. I sat up and reached into my purse, pulled out the letter, still folded, still creased like a scar from her betrayal. The loan agreement I never signed, but apparently did. I didn't open it. I just held it. A reminder that even in silence, even in generosity, someone could rewrite your story without your permission. I didn't cry. Not anymore. At dawn, I packed my things, slipped out of the house like a guest who had overstayed. In the hallway, just before I reached the door, I heard laughter drifting from the kitchen. Isabel's voice. She's so dramatic. It's always about her feelings. That one sentence hit harder than anything Mom had said the day before. There was a clink of plate, a fresh round of laughter. No one noticed I was leaving. I didn't slam the door, but I didn't look back either. I had less than a quarter tank left and a headache from skipping lunch. The sun had dipped below the edge of the Savannah skyline, her lies exposed in the fading light as I pulled in, boots sticky on the mat from a long shift at the warehouse. All I wanted was to fill up and go home. I slid my card into the pump. Declined. I tried again, slower this time. Holding my breath like that would somehow change the outcome. Declined. Maybe the machine was busted. I grabbed my phone, walked inside, and handed my card to the guy behind the counter. He tried it 3 times. "Ma'am, it's saying your account is locked." "Locked?" I blinked, said thank you with whatever politeness I could gather, and stepped outside to sit in my truck. My fingers felt disconnected from my brain as I opened my banking app. 0. Not a low balance. Frozen. Access denied. I tried the help chat, but it redirected me to the fraud department. Within minutes, I was on the phone with a voice far too calm for the kind of news she was about to deliver. There was an alert triggered from a linked lease agreement. She said, "Someone connected your account to a student housing contract flagged for irregularities. It's a precaution until we verify your authorization." I could feel my lungs tightening. I didn't authorize anything. I don't even live in student housing. "Well, your name is listed as a financial guarantor. It's now under audit." I sat in stunned silence. "We recommend filing an identity theft report," she added. Identity theft? This wasn't some stranger across the country. This was Isabel. That lease, that lie, this was an attack. I hung up and stared straight ahead. Her fraud had trapped me, but I'd break free. I wasn't angry. Not at first. I was empty. Then came the voice in my head. Mom's voice. "You're too dramatic." Was this dramatic? Sitting in my truck, unable to buy gas because my little sister played poor while draining me dry? No, this was theft. This was war. I drove home on fumes, my anger a weapon against her deceit. As soon as I got inside, I went straight to the filing cabinet, yanked out my "for later" folder, and spread everything on the kitchen table. Leases, screenshots, bank statements, the whole mess. Then I called Darren, the legal aid guy I'd once fixed a muffler for, who owed me a favor. "Yeah," I said. "It's time to meet." 3 days later, I came home from work and saw a notification pop up on my phone. The Lux posted a new video. I clicked without thinking. The caption read, "Birthday surprise for the best man I've ever known. H. Grateful." The video opened with soft music, candles, and her boyfriend's voice saying, "No way. Are you serious?" He opened a velvet box. Inside was a sapphire pendant. I knew that necklace. I bought it for Isabel the night she graduated. I'd worked double shifts for 2 weeks, skipped meals, walked to work to save gas just so I could afford something special. She'd cried when I gave it to her, told me no one had ever believed in her like I did. Now it was his. "He deserves the world," the caption read. I didn't flinch. Didn't curse. Didn't throw the phone. I saved the video, filed it, and moved on. That night, while pasta boiled half-forgotten on the stove, I sat down at my desk. One by one, I pulled up my HR records at the warehouse and removed Isabel as my emergency contact. Then I opened a blank document. Subject: Financial Independence Notice. I wrote the whole thing out. How I was no longer financially supporting Isabel. How any further charges in my name would be met with legal recourse. How I hoped they'd understand this wasn't punishment. It was protection. I didn't send it. Not yet. I saved it in drafts. I leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, heart steady, for once. Let them call me cold. I'd rather be cold than invisible. I pulled into their driveway just after 10 on a Friday morning, the heat already clinging to the edges of my sleeves. The folder on the passenger seat felt heavier than it should have been. Paper and ink, yes, but more than that. Every page inside it was a weight I'd carried in silence. My hands weren't shaking when I rang the doorbell. That surprised me. Dad answered. "Noah, didn't expect you this early. I figured we should talk while there's still light." He didn't ask what about. In the living room, Mom had her second cup of tea. Isabel wasn't there, thankfully. I sat across from them, pulled the folder from my tote bag, and laid the pages out on the coffee table. Statements, screenshots, even the video of the necklace. Mom gave it a glance and said, "You printed out TikToks now? I'm showing you how deep this goes." She crossed her arms, looking tired more than alarmed. "Why bring this here?" "Because I've been funding her life while she makes a mockery of mine. and you both pretend not to see it. Dad leaned forward, scanning a document. This lease? This says you co-signed, I didn't, and the credit freeze because of that lease. Mom looked at me like I was wasting her Friday. Noah, that's between you and your sister. Don't drag us into your jealousy. I blinked. Jealousy? She's building a future. You've always stayed local. You chose that. I chose it so she could go. I picked up a second job so she could stay. Dad held up a hand. No one forced you. I didn't say anyone did. But don't pretend like my sacrifices were nothing. Mom sighed. Look, Noah, we appreciated your help, but don't compare yourself to Isabel. You've always been different. That was it. Not we're sorry, not we didn't know. Just, you're different. I felt a cold stillness slide into my chest, the kind that doesn't beg for validation anymore. I stood, gathered my folder, and left their house without another word. Outside, the sun was too bright. I walked 2 blocks before I realized I'd left my car. I turned back, but halfway down the street I heard someone call my name. Noah. I turned. It took a second to place him. Ethan Brooks, high school speech team, senior yearbook editor. He used to tell me I was the smartest girl in our class. He looked good, broad shoulders, still carrying dreams I'd abandoned. He smiled. Didn't think I'd run into you here. Still in town? Yeah, I nodded, still around. You still working at Jerry's, the warehouse? I hesitated. Just between jobs, he nodded politely. Well, I always thought you'd end up running your own shop or something. Used to talk about that. Still dreaming of it? I smiled thinly. Something like that. Mentioned his kids, his wife, the new house near Clovis. I wished him well. Wished I meant it. When I got back in my car, I stared at my reflection in the mirror for a long minute. Still around, still working, still helping. That night, I pulled out my journal and wrote, I wasn't the loser. I just believed the wrong story. I listed everything I had done for Isabel. Every transfer, every grocery trip, every rent payment, 3 pages typed. At the bottom, I wrote, final tally, final straw. In the morning, I opened my email and attached the letter I'd drafted days ago to my parents. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't long, just a few sentences. This isn't war, but it is closure. I won't be funding or facilitating anything for Isabel going forward. I wish you both health and clarity. I didn't sign it with love, just my name. I turned off my phone and drove straight to the legal aid office. The receptionist recognized me. You here to see Darren? Yes, I said, and I'm ready to talk options. I thought that was the end until she came knocking, crying, begging, and lying. It was almost 10 o'clock in the evening, and I'd just gotten out of the shower when I heard the knock. Not frantic, just persistent. The kind that waits you out. Through the peephole, I saw her. Isabel Mascares streaked from her crocodile tears, arms crossed tight to sell her desperate act. When I opened the door, I didn't say a word. You can't just cut me off, she blurted, voice already cracking. You don't understand what I'm dealing with. I stayed in the doorway, one hand on the knob. I didn't invite her in. Not anymore. Please, she continued. They're threatening to evict me. I can't pay everything. I've been juggling. Mean collecting? Her breath hitched. I didn't lie. Not really. I just stretched the truth. You were helping. What's the harm in saying you weren't? I didn't respond. She sniffled. Mom and Dad said you'd cave. That you always do. That sentence slid down my spine like ice, and just like that, the years of exhaustion, of scraping by while they smiled wide at her, settled into something dense, permanent. I didn't reply. I simply closed the door. 2 days passed. I went to work. I changed my oil. I folded laundry while reruns played. I didn't speak to anyone about what had happened. Then, on Wednesday evening, my cousin Marion texted, "You need to see this, it's gross." Attached was a screen recording from Instagram Live as girls' night at her dorm. Someone had reposted it before she could delete it. In the clip, lounged on a bed sipping from a pink straw. Her friend asked, "How do you even afford all this stuff?" Isabel grinned. Easy. My sister's got this martyr complex. Just say your family, and she opens her wallet. The room erupted in laughter. She thinks she's the smart one. Bless her heart. That last line, it stung in a different way. Her mockery lit the fuse for my revenge. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone. I just walked to the closet, pulled out my file folder labeled for later, and added a sticky note to the top. Tonight, I stopped being her story. The next morning, I booked a private room at a small family-owned Italian restaurant downtown. I sent the invite to Mom, Dad, and 2 aunts who'd always said, "You girls need to stick together." I titled the event Family Update. They came, of course they did. Eleanor wore pearls. Henry adjusted his cuffs to feign innocence. Isabel showed up in designer flats I'd recognize anywhere because I paid for them. When everyone had settled and ordered drinks, I reached into my purse and pulled out a small Bluetooth speaker. Without introduction, I pressed play. Isabel's voice filled the room. "Just say your family." And she opens her wallet. Laughter. She thinks she's the smart one. Bless her heart. Silence. Isabel's face drained of color. Eleanor's lips parted. Henry blinked like a man caught in a lie. I stood slowly, reached into my tote, pulled out a crisp cashier's check. $1.00, I said, setting it in the center of the table. That's all I owe her now. Then beside it, I placed the folder. Free in thick, tabbed, documented, dated, every dollar, every sacrifice, every lie. I looked at no one in particular. Keep it or burn it, doesn't matter. Eleanor finally found her voice. "Noah, let's not." But I was already walking out. I didn't slam the door, didn't pause for effect. On the sidewalk, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. There was no applause, no dramatic background music, no hug from a long-lost relative. Just air and peace. And silence I finally owned. And she thought it was over. But the bill for all her lies was just coming due. The morning after the dinner, I woke up not to silence but to a storm brewing online. I hadn't posted anything. I didn't need to, but Isabel had. She filled her feed with cryptic quotes. Sometimes blood doesn't mean loyalty. Betrayal always comes from the ones closest to you. It was the kind of curated mess she always posted after blowing something up and pretending she was the victim. Only this time it wasn't working. Underneath her captions, comments began to shift. One read, "Wait, I thought your sister was paying your rent." Another, "Didn't she cover your books and groceries too?" And then someone posted a link to a public tweet from that same cousin who'd sent me the video. Funny how the truth sounds like betrayal to a liar. The cracks were visible now, and they weren't mine. Around noon that day, I was cleaning out the pantry when I heard the car pull into the driveway. I looked through the front window. Eleanor and Henry, not Isabel. I didn't open the door immediately. I took my time tying the trash bag, rinsing my hands, wiping them on the towel. Then I answered. Eleanor's eyes were already glassy. Henry's jaw was clenched, his voice sharper than I heard in years. "You embarrassed her," he said. "You embarrass us." I didn't flinch. I just tilted my head slightly. "No, I stopped covering for her. She embarrassed herself." Eleanor tried to reach for something softer. "You could have just talked to us." "I did," I said, voice steady. "Many times you just didn't hear me. They didn't stay long. There was no apology, but there weren't any threats either. Just silence. And when the front door closed behind them, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a boundary. That weekend, I finally started packing. The new house was small, just over 900 square feet near the coast, but it was mine. I hadn't even told most of my family yet, just my boss at the warehouse and my cousin Marion. I boxed up clothes, books, labeled cables and cords. I took my time. In the back of a drawer I'd nearly forgotten, I found a small velvet box. The sapphire necklace, the one I'd given when she graduated, the one I saw later gifted to her boyfriend like it meant nothing. I turned it over in my hand. The silver chain caught a slice of light through the window. It used to feel heavy with guilt and resentment, but today it just felt like mine again. I placed it in my own jewelry drawer. Not to wear, not yet, not as a trophy or symbol, just because I no longer had to give it away. That evening, Ethan texted me. Heard what happened, proud of you. I stared at the message a while before typing. It took me too long, but I got there. He didn't say more. He didn't have to. The next day, I met Marion for coffee. She slid into the booth like she always had, shoulders loose, phone in hand, ready for gossip. But this time, she didn't bring drama. She brought grace. You were always the strong one, she said over her mug. I smiled, and for the first time, I didn't correct her. The last box I packed was labeled loose ends. It had old receipts, folded letters, pieces of who I was before I realized being quiet wasn't the same as being kind. A week later, I stood on the porch of my new place, barefoot, warm coffee in hand. The weight of her betrayal lingered, but I was free. The necklace hung around my neck now. I didn't wear it for them. I wore it because it was mine again. I ran my fingers along the chain and whispered more to myself than anyone. This was the last thing I gave away without asking if I wanted it back. I'd reclaimed my life, but the scars of her lies remained. A reminder that truth wins, yet truth rebuilds slowly.